You're listening to the Heart Lessons Podcast with me, Sarah Rieke. Real women, real stories, real faith. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Heart Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and I'm so glad to have you joining me here today. Today is Tuesday, October 9th, 2018, and you are listening to episode number 61 with my special guest, Kristin Hernandez. I'm so happy to have Kristin on the show. She and I have been internet friends for the last year or so, and just really fun to be able to connect voice to voice, and instead of just over-typed words on a screen. So it was really fun to just have an actual conversation with her. And I know you are going to be so encouraged by the story that she shares today. Kristin is a lost mama. She lost her son, Ethan, and then had several miscarriages. And she shares her story today, what it was like to have those losses, to endure those losses, and then what it was like to wrestle with God as she made sense of what they were supposed to be doing, what she and her husband were supposed to be doing with regards to building their family. And I just love the picture that she paints of wrestling with God, still being face to face with Him, and still holding on to Him. And I just think if you're struggling with some really hard questions and struggling with whether or not it's okay to bring them before the Lord, I think by the time this podcast is over, you will be very encouraged that it's okay, that it's more than okay to present those hard questions to the Lord and grapple and wrestle with Him. And I think you'll find that you will have greater healing and greater wholeness in the end if you let yourself go there. So I am just so thankful for Kristin's words and her encouragement to anyone who's struggling with those hard questions today. You may or may not be familiar with Kristin, as she is a co-host of Through the Lens podcast. She hosts it with Holly Kalana, and I just love what they're doing over there with their podcast, just having gospel-centered conversation on what it means to suffer in this world and suffer in light of God's goodness and His sovereignty. And it's just an excellent podcast if you've lost anyone, if you've ever gone through anything difficult, but especially if you've lost babies. And so I just love those girls and what they're doing, and so glad to have had Kristin on the show, and Holly has been on the show in the past. And I'm actually really excited to partner with them for something kind of fun coming up at the end of the month. So stay tuned for the end of the episode, and you'll find out a little bit more about what we're going to do partnering with Through the Lens podcast this month. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Kristin Hernandez. Well, Kristin Hernandez, I want to welcome you to the Heart Lessons podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me, Sarah. I'm really excited.
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, and we have been like online friends for a while, so it's just really fun to just chat with you. I'm excited to include your voice in the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness series, and I know you have a wonderful story to share, and you have a lot to speak into women who are involved in the infant loss community, which it's a club none of us want to be a part of.
Yes.
But we all need to support one another. So just thank you for your voice in that. Before we jump into your story, can you just give us like a little snapshot of yourself and your family?
Yeah, well, as you said, my name's Kristin Hernandez. I live in Southern California with my husband, Chris. We'll have been married 7 years this November, so we're coming up pretty close. Yeah, like next month, I think, by the time this is coming out.
Yeah.
We'll be celebrating 7 years. And we have a dog named Dakota. We love our dog. And we also live with our newest son, Andrew. He is about to turn 5 months old. Such a little joy. He's our sixth baby. I know we'll get more into this in a little bit, but sixth baby, first baby that we're raising within our home. So, things look different around here than they did a few months ago. Yeah. I work for a school district in PR and communications by day. And at night, I mean, you can find me with family. It's one of my favorite things. We lead a small group at church, love getting together with friends, coffee shops, restaurants, eating food, all those good things.
Oh man, what's your favorite? What's your like go-to food profile?
Okay, so there's a lot of things I really like, but one thing, if you've not tried, or anybody listening has not tried Middle Eastern food,
Oh no, I haven't.
that is my favorite cuisine.
Okay.
So like it is just so good. So find like a Mediterranean or Middle Eastern place, like shawarma and falafel and all of that is so good. I had the opportunity to go to Jordan when I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
So I ate the food there and just like became addicted to it. It's so good, just so good. And so that I would say is whenever my husband and I are in a new city or a new place, we always use Yelp to find like the best Middle Eastern place. And we're like, we gotta try like all of them. So, which is just really fun, something fun we like to do together. But so far, like other side of that is I also really like a really good salad with like anything that has cranberries and goat cheese on it.
Okay.
It's like a win in my book. Very different things, but I like the fresh stuff. And I also, Middle Eastern food though is also very fresh. It's just,
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like lots of tomatoes and garlic and onions.
Yes.
And like,
yeah. Yes. Like, onion roasted tomatoes and, it's so good.
Well now I'm hungry.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my goodness. Oh, well, that sounds super fun. Okay, well, Kristin, I know as you said, you are part of the Infloss community. Baby Andrew is actually your 6th baby. So I would just be honored if you would go ahead and share the story of your babies with us.
Yeah, I would love to. Going way back when my husband and I first got married in 2011, we had probably been home from our honeymoon for like a week when my husband turned to me and basically said, whenever you want to start trying to have kids, I'm fine with it.
Oh, wow.
There was never pressuring it. It was not like a pressure thing or anything. It was just it's not even going to be a question in my book. Like the ball's in your court and I'm okay with it. And whenever you want a baby, you just let me know. And at that point, we'd been married for like a month and I was like, let's wait at least a year before we start this conversation. Like, I'm just enjoying like us being together and, this time together. But I always knew I wanted to be a mom. Ever since I was a little girl, that was kind of my big dream. When I went to university, I, picked a major I liked but my thought the whole way through, and I know everybody's so different in this. I never had like very lofty career aspirations. Like my goal was I want to major in something I love so that I can find a career I love so that one day when I'm a mom, I can be a good support to my family. Like that was, it was always through this like mindset of one day I want to be a mom.
Yeah.
So fast forward, we've been married about a year. I decided to go off of birth control and we decided to start trying and we could not get pregnant. We tried and tried and tried, and I went to doctors and went through a lot of tests and they couldn't find anything wrong with me. And just, it was really hard. At that point it was, the hardest thing in my life up until then. And just really, cried out to God, like, why, like, do I have this strong desire to be a mom? Like, I would give anything to just have a baby. And after a while, my husband and I both decided to take a break. We'd finally seen a fertility specialist who had gone through all this stuff that we should probably try. And I felt overwhelmed by all the options. And my husband was like, Kristin, like, why don't we just enjoy the holidays, take a break, and, we can revisit this after Christmas. But for now, like, let's just enjoy Christmas together. And so we did, and it was like early 2015 that we still hadn't started pursuing, any treatments or anything yet. We were considering what we were going to do from there. And I came down with what I thought was the flu, but turns out I was pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
With our son, Ethan. And I didn't think I was pregnant when my husband told me I should take the test because we had been trying for, at that point, it'd been like 3+ years. And I was like, there's no way I'm pregnant. Like, I definitely have the flu. Cycles have always been so irregular that it was not abnormal for me to go 4 months in between. So I, wasn't thinking anything of it. But turns out we were pregnant. And when we found out we were pregnant with Ethan, it was just like, we were so grateful. I just cried. And it was just so much like praising the Lord for, giving us this baby who we'd been praying for years. And we just, from that moment, we started to just pray over his life and that God would use his life to be a vessel to share the gospel, and that, through his life, people would, hear about Jesus perhaps for the first time. And we just continued that prayer. And, we were just blissfully unaware that anything could ever go wrong. I mean, I had heard of friends having miscarriages, and I knew that was a possibility, but especially once I hit 12 weeks, it was like, we're smooth sailing from here. Not a care in the world. We went to our anatomy scan when I was about 20 weeks pregnant, and we were just so excited to find out if he was a boy or girl. That was the entire focus, that we didn't think, they look at other things. Well, yeah, they look at other things, but the main point of this day, obviously is to find out if we're having a boy or girl. We were so excited. And, we went and we found out he was a boy, and there are a lot of little signs that in hindsight I see, but at the time I did not realize that the techs, because it was an ultrasound tech who performed the scan, that her whole demeanor changed about halfway through. And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, it's a long appointment. So there's nothing left to talk about. Like, she's just, serious.
She's
now.
done.
She's doing her job. Yeah, she's doing her. And at the end, she was like, I'll be back. And she left for a long time. And when she came back, she was just like, okay, well, the doctor will call you if, they need to discuss anything with you. Because in hindsight, I think she went to go find a doctor and there wasn't one available to talk to us.
Okay, yeah.
So we were sent home with the news that he was a boy. And we were just so excited. We went to the party store on the way home and bought, blue confetti and streamers so we could tell our families that weekend. It was Father's Day weekend. So we were going to see both of our sides of our families that week, and just so excited, and went through the weekend, announced, that he was a boy. Just such a fun time, sweet time celebrating this long awaited miracle boy, with our family. And Monday morning we actually left to go out of town. And we live in Southern California. We were going to Vegas for a family reunion with his side. And so it's not, crazy far. You can get there in less than the day. So we left early in the morning. We got there around lunchtime. And as I was getting out of the car, I got a phone call from our hospital. And they asked us if we could come in as soon as possible to discuss our ultrasound. And they wouldn't tell us anything over the phone. But I knew as soon as they said we need to discuss the ultrasound that something was wrong. Yeah. And he said, you need to meet with a geneticist. We need to make an appointment for you with a geneticist and one of our high-risk doctors. And I kept asking questions. Is this something everybody does? This was my first pregnancy. Is this standard procedure? Is there a reason I need to do this? And they just said, we really can't give you details over the phone. I'm not aware of all the details. The doctor will have to go over them with you. I just know the doctor wants to see you. So we ended up asking the question, we're on vacation. Do you need us to come home? And the receptionist was so sweet. And she said, you know what, let me personally go walk and ask the doctor what they would like you to do. Called us back and said, the doctor recommends you come home.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So we knew something was wrong. I cried all day long. And we didn't drive home until that night because we had just gotten there. There's family who had just flown into the airport. I wanted to leave immediately, but understandably so. My husband, who was also worried, said, our appointment's not till tomorrow morning. We just drove 4 hours to get here. We might as well wait until dinner and then drive home.
Yeah.
It's not till tomorrow. And I just cried the whole day. And in my mind at the time, I think I was envisioning that they were going to tell us that maybe he had some sort of disability, or that there was something along those lines that they noticed, which later, as we found out that there were more serious things wrong, I remember thinking back on that moment and thinking, what I would give if he had a disability. What a full life, and what a life full of joy and potential that there would have been even there, But on that day, that was my biggest fear. That was what I thought was the worst that could happen. And looking back, I see that would have been still a sweet, fulfilling thing.
Yeah.
And I know you understand that too.
Yeah.
Lived this. We went to see the doctor the next day, and they ended up telling us that he had a lot of markers for a chromosome abnormality, and that it was likely one that could potentially be fatal. They presented us with a variety of test options, and we decided to decline the test. We didn't necessarily have a problem with it. We just were concerned because some of them were a little invasive that could potentially cause preterm labor. And we, made sure with the doctors over and over, that having the results of this test wouldn't change their care for him. So since that was the case, we decided we would just decline testing and just wait. So we didn't have an official diagnosis. We just knew that our little boy that we've been praying for months was missing a piece of his brain, had a really severe heart defect, and was behind in his growth. And fingers, a bunch of other little things that at that appointment we didn't quite see. And they kept referring us to more specialists, and every specialist we met with found more. We kept praying, Lord, let this be the day that the doctors are stumped and they go in and the piece of the brain is there, and rather than that being what happened, it was every time we went in, it was, oh, now we see that his airway looks like it's blocked. We don't think he's going to be able to breathe when he's born. Oh, now we see this. We went to see a really good pediatric cardiologist in Los Angeles. And he even looking at the heart was like, this is like unlike a heart defect that I've seen. It's just it's so misformed. Like, we're going to have to do some major surgery if he survives to delivery. And we just were so just broken during that time. It felt so long. The time between diagnosis day and his birthday was about 2 months. And I feel like that felt like years. It felt like years of just, every week going to see a new specialist, driving to Los Angeles, talking to all these doctors, talking through a birth plan, all these things we were going to do. And on the evening of October 15th, 2015, my water broke in the middle of the night. I was 28 weeks pregnant, so we knew it was early. Didn't quite know, what diagnosis we were looking at. We just knew we had a really sick baby and he was coming early. So we rushed to our hospital, which is still about 45 minutes away from our house. Got there, stayed overnight, and the next morning, Ethan was born by emergency C-section next day at 1:32 p.m. He was born, and when he came out, he didn't cry. He was just so tired and so weak. And I remember, Chris went to be with him just across the same room by the incubator and by all this whole team of NICU doctors. And I remember just asking Chris over and over, is he breathing? What's he saying? Are his eyes open? Is he making noise? Like, what's happening? And Chris was talking me through it. He has a heart rate. His heart's beating, and all those doctors were working, and it happened so fast. They wheeled me in there because I labored him till I was about 8 centimeters before they wheeled us away for that C-section. And as soon as we got in the room, I asked Chris, I was like, will you pray? Like, I'm so scared. And I remember the moment Chris said amen, like he was out already. Like, it was so fast that this baby's, here, that we've been praying for months. He's here. And after about 30 minutes of all these doctors just doing all kinds of life-saving efforts that, my husband watched happen, I couldn't see because I was being, literally just like open across the room. And a doctor came up to me and said, I'm really sorry, Mrs. Hernandez, we're going to stop taking life-saving efforts. He's not responding. So they asked, do you want to hold him? And I said, yeah, I do want to hold him. So they handed him over to my husband and I, and we just stared at his face. And, I wept. And I think the part of those tears, though, that I don't think a lot of people maybe understood in that moment was he was just so precious and beautiful. It was this baby that I had been praying for years, and he was here, and I was a mom. And, a lot of people would say throughout my life, childbirth is hard and it's scary, but, once you hold that baby in your arms, you forget about it all. And I feel like it was just such a gift from the Lord that I had a brief moment of that, like, I kind of forgot about those months of doctor's appointments. And you don't fully forget. And it was like this just moment of just joy of this baby. You are who I've prayed for, and I've waited for you for so long, and now you're here, and you're sick, you know, and you're dying, but you're here and you're precious. And so my husband and I, we held him, and we sang to him, and we prayed, and we just snuggled him. And at 3:05 that afternoon, Ethan passed away, and, you know, slipped from our arms into the arms of Jesus, and, you know, no longer broken and sick, and his heart was, you know, new heart, new body. And we later found out, because we did ask to have testing done after he was born, because they said they could test the cord blood and easily get, you know, a distinct diagnosis. So we later found out he had trisomy 9, which is always fatal in the full form of it, not like mosaic form. So in the full form, he had it in every chromosome in his body. He had trisomy 9. So he had a 3rd copy of the 9th chromosome, and it's random, according to the doctors. It's very rare. The NICU doctor who delivered him said she had never seen a baby with trisomy 9. 13 and 18, yes, trisomy 13 and trisomy 18, but not trisomy 9. It's just very, very rare. Several doctors told us that, you know, babies with trisomy 9 typically should be miscarried in the first trimester. And a lot of times it's before you even know you're pregnant. It's really rare. So the fact that he was born alive, I mean, that in itself, according to doctors, shouldn't have happened. But it did. And he was our first little guy. And it was, I mean, I was so broken and confused when we lost him. And I wrestled with God so much. I think my big thing was like, God, why would you have answered this prayer for this baby, and this baby that we've been praying for? And, you know, we wanted to glorify you with this request. And this wasn't something bad to ask for. It's not like we were asking for something selfish. You know, we're asking for this good thing, and asking for this child that we can raise to love you, and who will, you know, share your name with his generation. Like, we're asking for this good thing. Like, why would you have allowed him to defy all of these odds, be born alive, and only to just die in our arms 93 minutes after he was born? And, you know, that was just really rough. And I feel like I wrestled with God a lot. And something that I've found is that wrestling is so intimate, and wrestling requires holding on and often looking somebody in the eye. And I feel like God really drew near to us in those days. And I can come back to that, but kind of moving forward, I guess, with our story. So that's Ethan's story, our first little boy. And I think that really just opened my eyes to like the pain and suffering in the world, and, you know, just fear too of like the future and what is this going to look like for us? But every doctor told us, you know, this is random. There's no reason not to try again. Like, give it a few months and, you know, try again, which I know for many of you listening, you know, who've lost a baby, it seems so trite to say we'll try again. Like, almost like this gaping wound isn't there, that you didn't lose, you know, a distinct child who had a personality and a soul, and, you know, you're not just going to just try again. Like, yes, you can try to have another child, but it's not like I just messed up this time and we're just going to try again.
Yeah, that's good perspective.
Yeah, I always had a hard time with that phrase, just so you can try again. And I felt like, well, yes, I would love to have more children, but this isn't just going to be, you know, a second attempt at something that didn't work out the first time.
Yeah.
So my husband and I took a lot of time to just grieve. You know, we had to work through that and we both went to counseling and just sought godly counsel, and just so many questions in prayer. And, you know, God really drew near to us in that season. And, I could get so much into that, and I think I will, but for the sake of moving through these, because I could talk all day, because there's so much that happened. But, so, you know, that following spring, we decided we'd try to have another baby, and that we were ready. We wanted to have another baby. So we knew it could take a long time, because it took about 3 years to get pregnant with Ethan. So we decided, you know, it's only been 6 months, but let's try again, because maybe we'll it might take another few years.
Right.
We got pregnant that month.
Okay.
So we were like, okay, well, Lord, thank you. Like, this happened very quickly. We were so, excited, nervous, but excited. And a week after having that positive test, I started bleeding, and I knew it's like, this isn't good. This is going to end pretty quickly, I think. And rushed to the hospital. They checked me out. They said, yeah, you had a miscarriage. It was early, so we probably don't need to do anything, invasive. We are going to just, take care of everything naturally. Give it one cycle and go for it again. So we waited a little after that, because it just was hard to lose baby. I mean, it was so early, but that that's a baby, and that you love that baby as soon as they exist. And that one, I think, felt like salt in the wound. I just felt like, Lord, like, you allowed me now to get pregnant so quickly, and now this baby's gone and I don't understand. And so we waited a little while. Around Ethan's first birthday, we decided we'd try again. And actually, on his first birthday, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
The third time, which I cried when I found out, because I told my husband, I said, why did I have to take the test on his birthday? Like, I didn't want to take away from the celebration of his day, but I woke up that morning not feeling well, and I hadn't had a period in a while, and I just had to do it so that I could get it out of the way and just enjoy Ethan's birthday. And it ended up being positive. But in my mind, it's going to be negative. Like, I'm just going to enjoy the day. So it was positive. And we just felt like, okay, Lord, like, maybe this is just it is your perfect plan, but maybe there's just like this sweet gift of, it's been a hard year, and on this day, like, what redemption, that like on this day, you're again. And things were going, fairly well. I wasn't feeling well. Started having some cramping a few weeks later. And when I was about 8 weeks pregnant, I ended up having a miscarriage with that baby, and just was like, Lord, like, I feel like you're leading me into the desert to wander. Like, why we're getting pregnant so easily now? Do you not want me to have a baby? Like, what is happening? And my body did not respond very well after I had that miscarriage. I had a fairly, I hate to use this word, because no miscarriage is easy. No miscarriage is easy. Physically, it was a smooth, like, my body did what it needed to do. But I feel like my hormones were never the same. After that miscarriage, I started to have really, like, bad cramps and pain, and ended up finding out I had developed cysts on my ovaries, and developed PCOS during that time. They don't think I had it before, but I had it, like, pretty bad during that time. And just really wrestled during that time with, Lord, like, now we've lost 3 babies. I have PCOS. Now I'm not ovulating at all. What do you want from us? And just in that season, my husband and I just decided to, like, let's just pull back from thinking about what we want to do, and let's just, like, rest. Like, we just need to rest. We're so weary. We just need some time. And fast forward about 6 months later, we had both been praying together but separately, and we both came to each other one day. It was May 2017 by this point, and I said to him, I was like, I don't know what it is or where this is coming from or when this would be in our family, but I really feel this, like, stirring in my heart toward adoption. And I don't know what that looks like or when it is, but I feel excited about it. Like, I don't feel like it's a plan B. Like, I feel excited and pumped up about it, that we could give a child, this home, and, like, this picture of, like, how God adopts us. And I just feel excited about it. And my husband looked at me and he was like, I feel the same way.
Oh.
Like, I've been the same way recently. So we, like, that week, like, started an application, like, dove in, like, talked to a caseworker, like, started this process. And I went to a doctor appointment that month to check on my cysts. And the doctor said, your cysts are gone. And did you know you're pregnant? It was like, no, what? Like, no, we're in the we've started this process. No, this isn't what I was wanting right now. And it felt like that cliche people say, like, oh, well, when you decide, you hear it all the time. I feel like in Christian circles, like, oh, if you do this, like, and you're content, like, God's going to give you that thing. And I kind of bought into that, I think, in a way, because in that moment I felt like, well, this is it. Like, Lord, like, we basically laid our, like, Isaac on the altar, this, like, desire for this baby that you've, that we thought we were getting, laid it on the altar. And now you're giving us this surprise pregnancy. Went into an appointment, found out it was twins. We were like over the moon, like, Lord, it just felt like restoring those years, 2 babies. Went in for another appointment. We saw their heartbeats. Everything was great. And when I was 11 weeks pregnant, I went in for routine ultrasound and their hearts had stopped beating.
Oh, goodness.
And I just felt like, God, like, could you have not closed the door on adoption a different way? Like, if you didn't want it for us for that time, like, we withdrew our application. We put everything on pause because we really felt like we needed to just, like, focus on what was in front of us at that moment. And it was this pregnancy we hadn't planned for. And, surprise twins. And God, like, I found contentment in you. Like, I was excited about this other journey that you were leading us down. You closed the door because we were pregnant with twins. So we felt like we needed to focus on this twin pregnancy that, best case scenario would probably be high risk just because it was multiples. So we needed to focus on that. And, Lord, like, why would you have, like, brought us this far and their hearts are beating and all of this? And, you chose to say no at 11 weeks, further than I had been any of the others that I had miscarried. And, I had to have a D&C, and that left us with a lot of questions, God, why? Like, why? Just hard, like, just being there with those losses. So those are the 5 babies. So it was Ethan, after birth, and then the 3 miscarriages total, but 2 babies in the 3rd miscarriage. So all 5 of those little ones that we lost before we had Andrew.
Yeah. I would love for you to go back and just talk about that wrestling that you mentioned, because I think that's so important. Number one, to just know that we are allowed to ask God these hard questions. We are allowed to wrestle. And if you could just kind of, I guess, walk us through what was going on in your head and your heart and just during that time.
Yeah. So I think it all kind of started when we were pregnant with Ethan. I grew up in the church and I was a pastor's kid. I am a pastor's kid, and, just always had like these, like, I knew scripture, but I think it was in those days with Ethan that I started to realize some of the things that I think we say because they sound good or they make us feel good that aren't biblical. And not necessarily things that I was ever told from, the stage on Sunday morning, but things that just Christians say, like things like, we're going to just pray and we just know, like, I have so many people say to me, like, we're praying and we just know Ethan's going to be okay because we're praying.
Yeah.
And we just know he's going to be fine, Kristin. Like, God is like a good God, and he would not have given you this miracle child if things weren't going to just be okay. Like, I heard things like that from people, and it wasn't from my pastors, and it was just, well-meaning people who wanted to encourage me. And then here we are months later, all these people praying, kind of dismissing my fears, saying, don't fear. God's got it. Like, he's going to be fine. And then now it's like, my baby's dead. Like, and it sounds so, harsh to say, but he's gone. Like, now what do you have to say to me? Like, all these people who've been telling me for months, like, he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. We're just going to pray, have, quote, enough faith, as if it's something that we in our flesh can conjure up that, he's going to be okay. And I wrestled with that. And I was like, Lord, like, why? It got in my head too. Like, God, like, why do we pray? Like, why do you ask us to come boldly before the throne and bring our requests to you? And why do you ask us to ask for these things and to have faith? And, faith as small as a mustard seed can move a mountain. Like, why do you ask us to do that? If, we did that. We had faith in your power and that you could do this. And you chose not to. And I'm having a hard time believing that you're hearing me or that you're good in this situation. And I was mad. And a lot of my prayers in the beginning, they weren't gracious. They were like, God, what in the world are you doing? Yeah. And I used more colorful language than that when I was talking to him. Lord, like, what in the world? Like, what is this? Like, why? And that wrestling, I feel like I started to just like come to him with my anger. And I see it as like a little kid on their daddy's chest, like punching at his chest, like while he's trying to hold me. And I'm like hitting him, like, no, put me down. Like, I'm mad. Like, we've seen that. Like, we've seen that picture of picking like a 2-year-old up. They're so mad and they're crying and tears and snot and they're banging on their daddy. And, and I feel like God in that moment was like, okay, like I can take this. Like I am your good father. And a woman told me, when I was pregnant with Ethan, we found out the diagnosis, and this woman that I really admire and really just was a support to me during that time. She had lost a baby 30 years prior. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, and this always stuck with me. She like took my hand one day and tears in her eyes. And she said, Kristin, God is a good father and he does not leave his children empty handed. And I don't know what that means he's going to hand you. She said, I don't know what that's going to look like. We see that in Matthew 7. Jesus says, if you who are evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more does your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? She said, God is not going to give you a snake if you ask for a loaf of bread. Like we see that in scripture. Like he's not going to give you something harmful. She said, but I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
It might be healing, it might not be, but I assure you, like God is not going to leave you with empty arms at the end of this. And empty arms or, full arms might or might not be a baby. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like. He's going to fill your arms with good things because he's a good father. And I clung to that, like, as I was banging on, God, the Father's chest, asking him, like, God, like, where's the good in this? Like, what is this? And I started to dive into scripture. And to be honest, like, a lot of it in the beginning was, like, diving in, like, almost to, like, spite him. Like, there's got to be, like, a flaw somewhere. Like, there's got to be a flaw. Like, I need you to show me, Lord. Like, do you love me? Do you care? Are you good? And, like, where can I find that? Because I don't feel that. Like, I'm doubting that. And I feel like, going on with that analogy, like, God, the good father, like, just held me in his arms as I pounded on his chest and cried and just said, okay, I will show you. Like, I will show you that I am good. And I will show you the heart of the gospel, that I sent my son down to earth to die, to be the death of death, to conquer death forever. This death that is bringing you so much pain, like, I hate it. I hate death. That is the gospel, Kristin. Like, I sent this to take these horrible, horrible, painful things in the world. Not just death of babies, but like people who are treated unjustly and like, all these like horrible things in the world, injustice and mistreatment and all these things of people and death and sickness and things that are just awful and make no sense. Like I see that and I call it bad too.
Yeah.
And that is why I sent Jesus. In Isaiah 25, it says to swallow up death forever. Like I'm sending him to swallow it up forever. And that Jesus is a man of many sorrows, well acquainted with grief. We also see that in Isaiah, and that he knows your grief. And that is why he came. And one day all of this will be gone and he will swallow it up forever. And the first big stage of that has already happened with the resurrection of Jesus. And that is the gospel. And I started to see like, okay, Lord, like I came to scripture looking for like a flaw with it. And I ended up seeing that like, no, this is the big picture, that this, me wrestling and like this pain here, like that is why you came. And that is, you were so good in it. And I think through all of this, wrestling and questions, I think we hear a lot of people saying like Romans 8:28, we hear it a lot. God will work all things together for good. And I think I used to hear that as like all these things in your life, they're good. Like you should just celebrate these things and, be happy and like rejoice. And I heard a lot of these like good, like feel good Christianese sayings from people around me of, like, oh, we should rejoice. He's in heaven. Like, and I think like, that's true, but I'm so sad he's not here. Like, right. I'm so sad he's not here with me. I'm so sad my babies aren't here. Like, yeah, like God's gonna work all things together, but these are bad things. And one day it occurred to me and I felt like the Holy Spirit laying it on my heart. Like this verse is not saying that all things are good. It's saying that I will work all things, like the broken things, the horrible things, and I'm going to work them together for good in your life. And, these bad things, like I know they're bad. And that is why I sent Jesus. And you can come to me with your anger. And I just started to see also throughout scripture, like just the way people wrestled. After we lost the twins, I read Job and I really dug deep into the book of Job, and I had read it before. And to be honest, like in the past, it never did anything for me because it was just so poetic and like over my head. And it was like I'll just say it. I was bored. Like I was like, this is not boring. I don't understand what is happening. Okay, he lost everything. And there's chapters and chapters of stuff that like, I don't get it. And I decided I'm going to revisit Job. And I had never there's so much I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
So Job loses everything, like everything. He loses his livestock and his possessions, his home, all of his children in one swoop, his health, everything. And I kind of at that time, not to like completely compare myself to Job, I feel like I was there. I was like, God, like you've taken my health. Like I have these cysts, all my babies, like I don't understand, like friendships, like all these things. Like I just feel like, why is all this gone? And in Job, we see his friends come to comfort Job, and they say the things that I think a lot of us have been told of, well, maybe you did something wrong. Like maybe God's trying to teach you something. Maybe God is, maybe your children did something wrong that this is happening. And, Job's being told all this by his friends, and Job the whole time is just like, first off, like, I don't know what I did. So if you know, please tell me. I don't know. Like I'm trying here. And he's also, we see this picture of Job, like asks God to end his life. Like he's so broken. And we see this picture of grief of Job saying like, God, like it'd be better had I never been born. Like take my life from me. I like, just take it. And, that's one example, I think, of many examples in scripture we see with the Psalms, or another. We see like lamenting, or Lamentations. It's like a whole book of lamenting. And starting to see that like God welcomes our grief. And he is not going to look at us and say, well, why didn't you have enough faith in me? Why aren't you like, putting a happy little smile on and just, knowing like, oh God, you've got this. Like, I'm just going to be happy. Like, no, like, yes, at the end of the day, I want you to rest in my sovereignty, but it's okay to ask me these questions. And I love at the end of Job, I feel like I'm a little all over the place, so I apologize. But I feel like at the end of Job, what I love is God doesn't tell Job why he suffered. And Job's asking him, like, God, like, why? Like, why? And God finally appears to Job, like, after, like, 40-something chapters of, like, Job's friends giving him awful advice and guilting him, and Job, like, wanting to be, like, rid of all of his pain. And God basically says to him, like, who he is. And that's enough. He says to Job, like, where were you when I put the stars in their place and I laid out the foundations of the earth and I told the sun when to come up? Like, where were you when I did that? Like, do you understand, like, who I am? And Job basically, like, looks at him and says, like, up until now I had heard of you, but in my pain I see you. And I know who you are. And basically, this is me paraphrasing, but basically says to God, like, okay, like I know who you are, and that is enough. And I can rest in that is enough. And I just think scripture is full of encouragement that we can come to God with those questions. Like God didn't strike Job down. He didn't strike David down. David's called a man after God's own heart. He wrote a good majority of the Psalms, many of which are asking, God, like, why? How long? How long, oh Lord? And it just points us back to the hope we have in the gospel that, God is coming back to make all of this good forever. But he already did the big work of, coming down to earth, dying in our place, taking sin and death with him on the cross and being victorious over it in the resurrection and swallowing up death forever. And I think that is such an encouragement as we wait with broken hearts and knowing that he draws close to the brokenhearted. And, also the Beatitudes, we see the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus is saying, like, blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Like, we don't think, I think sometimes just what a blessing that actually is, I think, to be in pain. And not that it's easy. I hope that doesn't sound trite of, well, it's so good. And like, it's hard. I mean, I wrestled, like we went to counseling. Like there were days I couldn't get out of bed. It's not to say that I just put a smile on and said like, oh, it's because I'm going through this really hard thing. But I think God draws near to us, in our pain. And I see the ways that he comforted us when we were just so broken and confused, and he drew near to us, even in the times where I wanted to push him away, like that little, little child on their father's chest, just trying to push him away, get away from me. but he hung in there and was like, I can handle it, Kristin. Like, you can bring all your anger to me. Just don't stop talking to me.
Yeah.
Like, wrestling is holding on. And that is what I feel like I did during that time. And it's not to say like, oh, I did this great thing. Like, and I was mad. Like, I was mad. And I had doubts and questions. And I feel like I grabbed him by the shoulders and looked him in the eye and was like, speak to me. Like, what are you doing? And, I think when we aren't afraid to do that, I think sometimes we're afraid to do that. Like, we're afraid to wrestle. We're like, God, you're so big and powerful. And maybe we were raised to think, maybe even if only subconsciously, maybe no one ever told us, but maybe subconsciously we were raised to think like, if I'm a good daughter, of God, like, I'm not going to question him. I'm not going to say anything bad about him. Like, I'm just going to like submit to who he is. And while yes, God calls us to submit, like, he also calls us like children to come to him and ask him things, even if they're angry things like, God, why did you do this? Like, why is this? And knowing that he may or may not give us clear answers, but he welcomes us to do that. And he doesn't turn his back on us when we do that. Yeah. He wants us to do that. And he says, cast your burdens on me, come to me, bring all this to me, and I can handle it. And I think in wrestling with him, we find him there. And I think, we need to just allow her to go there, be afraid and not shame ourselves, draw close to him, even if drawing close to him looks like fighting and wrestling and, asking.
Yeah. I think everything that you're saying, I just appreciate so much that you are verbalizing these things that we all feel inside when we're going through something difficult. Like, and saying it's okay to say them to the Lord. Like, first of all, he knows them anyway because he knows your thoughts. Yes. So there's that. We
can't hide from him.
You can't hide. But then also, like, acknowledging and being honest, I guess, about what you're thinking and feeling towards the Lord in those times of deep grief is like the first step to healing. If you think that it needs to be repressed or buried or never acknowledged, or like you said, you can only ever see like the good or the positive side, which, even as you said, there still were things to be thankful for, even in the midst of what you were going through.
Yes. Yeah.
But to only look at that, it's like then you can't get to what's really hurting your heart. And in order to heal that part, you need to bring it to the surface. And like, it's okay. Like, I guess if anybody's listening, struggling with this, I just think that you would encourage them as well as I am right now. It is okay.
Absolutely.
To feel this, it is okay to bring it to the Lord, and he's not going to shy away. You're not excommunicating yourself from the church.
He's not going to walk out on you because you have questions or, and I think it strengthened my faith to ask questions. You would think like it was a lack of faith, like maybe from the outside. And at times, like, I mean, it was, I was doubting and I had questions, but I think in the end it strengthened it. And I think we can liken it to any important relationship in our life. Like, if our best friend or our husband or somebody was doing something that we had a question about, like, we would probably come to them about it and ask them, like, what, like, that's intimacy. Like that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That fosters intimacy. And it wouldn't be a very good relationship, I think, if we just kept quiet and we're like, well, I'm not going to bring it up because, I'm just not going to bring it up. It's like the best, healthiest relationships are when we can go to that person and be like, I'm hurt. Like, I'm really hurt by this. And, at the end of the day, trusting him, even if we don't get answers, but knowing that, he hears us and it's okay to be broken. Like, it's okay to be broken and to hurt.
And as believers, we are to look to Christ as our example. And if we look at the example of Christ, like before he died on the cross in the garden, he was in agony. Yes. And he was asking the Father, please, I do not want to do this. If you can think of any other way. And then when he was on the cross, he said, God, why have you forsaken me? It's like the Lord, Jesus himself felt all this and he spoke it out loud. He didn't hide it. He didn't shy away from it. So I think just to anyone listening who feels like they can't be honest with the Lord with their deep grief or deep questions, like, just feel free to not feel that way and just know the Lord will love you anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I know that we are, as I said, I was going to try to keep it around an hour and we are getting close, but I want to not forget the part of your story where baby Andrew joined. And if you could tell us, I guess, sort of, I'm so sorry that we're going to have to like do a brief overview of the miracle that baby Andrew was, but if you could like give just like,
we'll do
just like a little synopsis. Summary.
Too, if anybody wants it in more depth, episode 16 of Through the Lens podcast.
Yeah, great.
We give a pretty in-depth overview of everything that happened. But just to catch everybody up to speed. So we decided after we lost the twins that we were done trying to have more biological kids, which I should probably never say again, because I should just never say that again, because that always seems to be my famous last words, but for lack of a better phrase. But so we found out last fall that we were pregnant. And literally 2 weeks before we found out, my husband said, I want to try again. And I said, I don't think I can ever do this again. I don't ever want to do this again. It only takes one time to think, well, maybe I'd be okay with it. And then 2 weeks later, I found out, oh, we're pregnant. So we found out we were pregnant. And to be honest, I mean, I was afraid.
Yeah.
I mean, after the 5 losses, I thought, Lord, I trust you. I think I had come, not that I had come to a place where I didn't have fear and I didn't have doubts, but I think I had come to a level of intimacy with him over the last few years that I trusted that he would be good no matter what happened and that he would take care of us. But I think of the C.S. Lewis quote that says something along the lines of, we're not necessarily doubting that you know what's best for us. We're doubting, or we're wondering how painful what's best for you will be.
Yes.
And that was where I was God, I know you're going to take care of us and I know you're so good, but I also know that that doesn't always mean a healthy baby at the end of this.
Yeah.
And I know that. And no matter how many people tell me, you know, oh, you've earned this or whatever, like, I know that's not true. I know I've earned nothing apart from your grace. And I do not know if that means that I'm going to have this baby. So I need you to just help me, because I'm really afraid that we're going to go through something painful all over again. So ended up at 12 weeks, went in for a scan, healthy baby, healthy heartbeat, everything looked great. Did some tests this time around, mainly because my doctor thought it would give me reassurance, because they were fairly certain everything looked good at our early scans. But they were like, I think you'll just feel good if you have like a test to look at to see like all these chromosomes look fine. So we did, and we ended up finding out everything was chromosomally normal. We found out he was a boy, which was another bit of emotion, but also a good emotion. Just, you know, knowing after losing Ethan, just how precious that little boy was to me, and knowing we're having another precious little boy. And everything was going great. We had our anatomy scan. I was so scared of that anatomy scan. That to us was like the pinnacle moment that we were counting down toward for this pregnancy. Anatomy scan looked great. We had a great high-risk doctor who'd been doing it for years, who performed it live so that we could have answers right away. Said, this baby looks healthy. I have no concerns. Everything looks good. But because you had preterm labor with your first, we're going to just check you closely every 2 weeks. We'll make sure like nothing's happening. Because preterm labor with Ethan, they thought was pretty much due to his condition. They said a lot of times people who are sick come early. Your body's strong. We don't think you're going to have preterm labor. But when I was 22 weeks pregnant, I went in for a doctor appointment with that doctor and found out that I was like completely effaced.
Oh, wow.
No cervical length left. And I was having contractions that I thought were Braxton Hicks contractions because they weren't painful. And I was going into labor. And I was like, God, why? Like, this healthy baby number 6, we've made it this far. Like, why is this happening now? And why now is it not that my baby's sick, but like my body's trying to kick him out early when I'm 20 months pregnant? I mean, I was a wreck. Like, they sent me over to labor and delivery in the hospital. I was so broken. I just cried and cried. And a kind-hearted doctor admitted me, even though I wasn't to the age that they would consider babies to be viable, admitted me, advocated to start kind of putting me on some medication to hopefully stop down labor, doing a bunch of different things. And I ended up I went to bed each night not knowing if I'd wake up pregnant the next morning. Mm-hmm. Just was, Lord, like, I am afraid that you're not going to do this because you've said no every time up until now. But I feel like you're asking me to trust that you can. So I'm going to ask you anyway, but I have doubts that you might not do this for me. But I'm going to ask you to hold our baby in because I know you can, and help me to just rest in knowing that you can, even though you haven't for me yet. and knowing that you've been good, even in those no's. And, long story short, 10 weeks passed, and our son Andrew was born 10 weeks later when I was 32 weeks pregnant. He was 4 pounds, 6 ounces. So when I got there, they were estimating that he was about a pound. And over those 10 weeks of laying in a hospital bed, 3 centimeters dilated, just hanging out in the hospital for all that time, he gained a lot of weight. He didn't need oxygen. He was just healthy. And he stayed in the NICU for 4 weeks while he learned to eat and gained some weight. He came home, and now he's coming up on being 5 months old. He's chunky. You'd never know he was a
so cute.
His rolls. He's chunky. He's such a joy, and such a little joy that I was never promised, and that I didn't do anything to earn, but that God and His graciousness and generosity put in our lives, and we're so grateful. We're so grateful, and we did not know how His story would unfold when I was pregnant with him. Yeah. No idea. And just so grateful that he's here. So yeah, that's Andrew. That's our little guy.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm just so excited that your story ends that way. But can you speak into what would happen if it didn't end that way?
Yes. I wrote about this a lot and journaled about this a lot and spoke about this a lot before Andrew was here. And that was kind of my soapbox, I guess you would say. Yeah. Because people would tell me a lot before Andrew was born, God's going to give you a baby one day. You've been so faithful. And I feel like I want to make it clear to anybody who may be wondering, I don't think that's why God gave me Andrew. It's not because I will never be good enough. That is why we have Jesus. It's not something I earned. But people were telling me this, and I remember one day thinking, well, what if he doesn't? What if he doesn't? And I know that not everybody gets the miracle in that form. And I think my encouragement would be, going back to Matthew 7, where Jesus says, he does not, basically, in paraphrase, does not leave his children empty-handed. He gives good gifts to his children. And I think even if that does not come in the form of a baby, God has such a plan for each of our lives. He is so good, even in the no. And he will draw near to you and comfort you, even if that's not what it looks like. He is so good, and he works all things together for good. Even those really hard things, and he gives good gifts. He satisfies our hearts with more of him, and he will draw near to us, even in those seasons of waiting and of hurt.
Yeah, and like you said, it doesn't. I think that. What that woman shared with you, God will fill your hands, but it might not look like a baby. It's so good to keep in mind. Yeah. It doesn't have to be an equal, what am I trying to say? Equally transferable gift,
yes,
I guess.
Yeah. And I think, I can even think of things too when we lost Ethan that, for the sake of time, we didn't get into all of them. But I can think of the people I've had conversations with about Jesus because of Ethan's life. Because we lost him. I can think of the people who wanted nothing to do with God, who suddenly wanted to know, Kristin, what is it about you and your faith that is keeping you through this? I can think of, I got a letter from a prison inmate who read Ethan's obituary.
Oh my goodness.
Because we shared
that's incredible.
Just how good God is, in the obituary, and how, even in the worst thing, and this is hard and our hearts are broken, God is sovereign and he loves us. And this person wrote to me. They actually wrote to my church because that was the address of where the service was, and it was in the obituary. And the secretary on a Sunday said, this letter came with your name on it to our church. This prison inmate who decided, if you could still love God after everything you've been through, I think I can ask him for forgiveness and give him a shot.
Word.
Just tears, so many little things
word.
like that. And some of those things, we may never know about. It was just great shit. Such a gift that I got to know about that. But the fact that, even that, with Ethan, it was we had full arms, even in losing him, just the full arms of the, relationships and things that were restored in it, even though it was, still the hardest thing that we've ever walked through, just seeing God working, those horrible things for good, and just being, victorious even in that.
Yeah. Oh, Kristin, that's incredible. Thank you so much for you. I feel like if I were going to summarize what you've gone through, I think you just have such great faith. I think you are just such an example of a woman with great faith, and I admire you greatly for that. Just laced throughout your story, it's worth emulating very, very much. So just thank you for living that out for all of us to see.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah, for letting me share my story. And I'm encouraged that God can be glorified through it. And even knowing, the days that my faith was very, very rocky and shaky, I'm so glad that he can be glorified in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I have 3 last questions. Do you think we can still pack them in?
I think we can. Let's do
Okay.
it.
Okay. So the first one, I just want to ask, in the spirit of Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, what do you want people to be aware of with regards to pregnancy and infant loss?
Yeah, the big thing that comes to mind with this is that women who have lost a child at any age or gestation are still mothers. I walked around as an invisible mother for all those years up until now. People look at me now and now they see, oh yeah, she's a mom. They think I'm a brand new mom, which in some ways I do feel new, but they don't know all those years that I felt like wanting to scream and shout from the rooftops, like I'm a mom, babies that I care for. And I think that is what I think anybody who's lost a baby would want to know, is that they're still a mom. And even if they've had living children before they lost that baby, they are still a mom to that baby, and that they still think about that baby and they want to talk about that baby. And just like any mother, they want their children to be known and loved and to matter and be remembered. And I think that it is an encouragement to anyone who's lost a baby when we can remember with them and acknowledge that their baby was real and they were here, and that baby mattered, and that woman and that man, they matter as that baby's mom and dad.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And I think just something that is so sweet is when people ask for details about the babies I've lost and ask for them by name, or say honestly, I just had a friend yesterday. Our son that we lost, his birthday's coming up tomorrow. He would be 3. And and my friend said, what are you going to do on Tuesday? She remembered. And I answered her, but I was welling up with tears because nobody asks. It's so sweet. You don't even know.
Share.
Oh yes. Yeah. You can't even explain what it means when people remember the babies that have radically changed your life. You will literally never forget them, literally.
Yes.
But to the world, it's a quiet thing. They don't remember, and so it just means so much.
It means so much.
Yeah,
I agree. Oh, all right. I love that.
Yeah. Well, Kristin, these are the last 2 questions that I ask everyone who comes on the show. As you are walking out the story God has written for you, what is a heart lesson He's been reminding you of lately?
The thing that I think of, that I keep being reminded of over and over, is to rest in His sufficiency, and that He gives us our daily bread and manna for each day. And that when He tells us in Matthew 6 to ask for our daily bread, we're not asking for a storehouse of grain. Not that there's anything wrong with asking for the big things. I think He welcomes us to do that too. But He says, give us this day our daily bread is how we are to pray. And in Exodus 16, we see that He gave the Israelites manna and quail to eat every day. And if they collected more than they needed, it would spoil. And I was reminded of that in the hospital, just as I was worrying, and every night going to bed wondering, am I going to still be pregnant tomorrow? And I feel like that was the message I kept feeling impressed on my heart, is I give manna for every day, and I will be your daily bread. And all you need to worry about is right now and today. And I will give you the strength you need for right now and for today. And that lesson, though it was huge in my pregnancy throughout Andrew and just all the fears I had, it's continuing through, parenting this sweet little guy. The fears didn't just, magically go away when he was born. I think we sometimes think maybe it will. And then it's there's other little worries and things. And I feel like it's just a constant reminder of I will give you the sufficiency and the strength for each day. And, I am your sufficiency, and you can find everything you need in me.
Yeah. And even on a super practical level, like not just, worrying about your kids, but it's like, I didn't sleep very much last night and I really can't anticipate like doing this for 10 more years or, whatever it is. It's like, well, maybe you slept bad last night, but tomorrow's a new day. The next day's a new day. It's like every day, so yeah. Oh, that is just such a good word for, I feel like being in the present is just really difficult for some reason. It's like, we just want to like somehow control the future, and worrying about it is maybe controlling it in a way. I don't know. It's kind of backwards.
Yeah, no, I love to be in control.
I know.
Yeah, it's a problem.
I know. I'm realizing that more and more of myself as I get older. Like I thought I was laid back. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, I'm definitely not.
I'm not. Okay, well, Kristin, this is the last question. Just for fun, what is something you're looking forward to?
Sweaters.
Oh my gosh,
looking
me
forward
too.
to wearing sweaters.
What's the weather like with you or for you guys right now?
Well, right now it is cooling down and it's about in the 90s all week. It's just so sad to say. It's high 80s and low 90s all week. We had a really hot summer and even into September. And it's like in the 80s this week, which to us, I mean, yesterday we were leaving for church in the morning and we were like, oh, there's like a cool breeze. And it was probably like 75. I mean, it's still a warm day, but we were like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
So we're pretty far inland and it gets pretty hot. So it's cooling down, and I cannot wait to wear a cozy sweater when it cools down.
Does it get cold? Like, does it get cold in LA?
So we get weather like in the 60s.
Okay.
50s and 60s. Like when it's really cold in the winter, like, I mean, it's people in like the Northeast are laughing at me right now, but it gets to be like in the 50s, like mid 50. I mean, I think 55 is cold. I know some people, I have friends who live family, a lot of my family lives in the Midwest. And I'm sure they think that's hilarious because they'd probably be wearing shorts. But 55, like you can definitely be wearing a sweater and boots.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like that's my favorite. I feel like 50s and 60s are like my ideal temperature because you can wear cozy things. You can still put the fireplace on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm really looking forward to it too. We're having similar temperatures. We just finished like the weekend of when we were anticipating the Hurricane Florence. And so we're getting still some like cool breezes from that.
Weird weather from that.
But I'm really looking forward to sweaters and boots and scarves. And
it'll be so nice. I'm so excited.
Me too. Kristin, this has been so fun. And just bottom line, I'm just happy to have been able to chat with you after many months. I know, it's or a year great. Or something of like online
chatting. It's great to hear your voice after talking to each other through like printed words on a screen for so long. So and also hearing your voice because I listen to Heart Lessons all the time. So it's funny because it feels like I know your voice, but now we get to respond in real time.
Oh, well, so that's
it's
funny.
Great.
Well, I really am thankful that you agreed to be on the show. And truly, just as you were talking, I know that I think it's worth mentioning. You said you didn't really prepare much. You just wanted to kind of go as the Spirit led with what you decided to say. And I am just proclaiming that I am positive that someone is going to hear what you said about wrestling and it is going to meet them where they are. And I just know it, and just thank the Lord that you were obedient. And thank you for sharing here on the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Kristin, thank you so much for sharing the details of your sweet babies. I know those details are really sacred, and just thank you for sharing them with us and for just your own honesty and your vulnerability in sharing your story. I just think there's so much value in seeing how somebody suffered and struggled and wrestled with God and still came out on the other side and still can proclaim His goodness. And Kristin does that for us, and I know there is just great value in a testimony like that. So thank you so much, Kristin. Everything that Kristin and I mentioned in today's episode, you'll be able to find in the show notes, sarahrieke.com/podcast. And I will also include links to Kristin's Through the Lens podcast that she hosts with Holly Kalana. I encourage anyone to check it out, especially if you've lost someone near and dear to you. Just what a wonderful job they do diving into scripture and what it means to suffer in light of the gospel and in light of God's goodness. And right now they're going through a series on prayer and miracles and what that means even when you've asked God for a miracle and He says no. And they're going through a series to kind of explore those questions. So if that's something you're interested in, I would highly recommend that you check that out. All right, well, I know I mentioned at the top of the show that here at Heart Lessons, we are going to partner with Through the Lens podcast for something special for this month of pregnancy and infant loss awareness. And so Kristin and Holly and I are going to be hosting an Ask Us Anything Facebook Live video on Tuesday, October 22nd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And so we want to invite you, of course, to watch the video, and we'll have more information on Instagram and in the show notes and on our Facebook pages. But in the meantime, until then, please feel free to submit questions. We would like to address any questions you might have as far as pregnancy and infant loss goes, or for each one of us, pertaining to each one of our individual stories, just anything that you would like to ask regarding pregnancy and infant loss, our stories, how we survived, the things that we went through. We are open to those types of questions and would really love to answer them for you. And so through email, Facebook, Instagram, you can find us. And again, I'll put the links in the show notes that you can connect with us and just submit your questions. And I'm really excited to partner with those ladies and just bring a little bit more awareness and attention to pregnancy and infant loss, and especially what it means to lose babies in light of the gospel. I'm excited to share next week's episode is going to feature Deb Doherty, and she is the perinatal bereavement RN here in my area. And so she is going to share her story of infant loss and just going to share what she does at the hospital for women who have lost babies and who are in the process of delivering a stillborn baby or in the process of delivering a baby who's not expected to live very long. And so not only does she have professional side to share with us, she's also a woman who loves Jesus and who lost a baby. And so I am just really excited to share her with you, her story and her experience and her wisdom. So tune in next week and we'll hear from Deb Doherty. All right, friends. Well, that is all from me for today. As always, I hope you found this episode to be inspiring and encouraging to help you walk well in the story that God has written, especially for you. Bye, guys.